Fender Custom Shop Jeff Beck's signature Stratocaster NOS electric guitar in surf green. Check this out. $4,850. This is the listing. But this is the actual guitar. You see? Signature model. You know, I'm wondering if Jeff Beck could ever see this guitar in person, would he confuse it for his own personal guitar? In other words, is this recreation of his guitar that good that it might even fool Jeff Beck into thinking that this is his own guitar? I don't know. We can't ask him, obviously, but we can put it on the workbench and see if it's any good. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, why bother making it perfect if I can sell it to you for the same amount of money? And you gotta admit, that's a good point. And in this case, the amount in question is $4,850. Wow. For a Fender Custom Shop Jeff Beck signature model Strat. You know, I've been seeing this a lot lately from guitar manufacturers, but as you know, Guitar Quackery is a consumer advocate channel. I'm here to inform you. Every time a customer buys a new guitar and brings it over to Guitar Quackery for a setup, I'll do a review for you. And it's always going to be a non-sponsored, non-biased review. I just show you what I see. This time, a customer bought this guitar, and I put it on the workbench. Now, let's go over to the workbench, and let me show you what I found. Here it is. This is the guitar. This is what it looks like. It looks good. Yeah, but looks can be deceiving. When it comes to guitars, we don't want to rely on looks alone. We want to put it on the workbench, take some measurements, and then draw our conclusions. So what I like to do is I like to go over everything with a fine-tooth comb and then make my final decision. So I'm going to start by taking some close-ups of, how about this, the pickups. So these are ceramic noiseless pickups, double coil pickups. They're basically humbuckers. Here we have chrome hardware. I already see something I don't really like. So as you can see, these screws are sticking out and they are sharp. You can feel the edges. I'm not sure if this is a Jeff Beck signature feature. I don't know if he liked scratching the palm of his hand when he was playing, but this is what we see here. Yeah, also there's hardly any space between the front of the saddle and the bridge plate. And speaking of the bridge plate, I don't know how they set this up, if they meant to set it up decked or as a floater. So if it was set up as a floater, we would see a gap of about 1/8 of an inch like this. And if it was decked, it would be all the way down against the body. But as you can see, when I push it against the body, there's a little gap that remains here. So this might be because these two screws are not driven down enough, or it could be the bushings. What I see sometimes on Fender guitars is that these bushings, the brass bushings, are not pushed all the way into the body because the holes are not drilled deep enough. So I had to do some repairs. So we'll see what the deal is with this bridge once I remove the strings, which we are going to do. Well, here I see something that I don't like. I see a gap. Yeah, we don't like to see this gap. This can cause some string alignment issues. So let's have a look at this. From above, we can see that this string is in fact very close to the edge. So it can slip as you are playing a solo. And this string is significantly further away from the edge. So I believe in this case is just a misaligned neck, which would, explain the gap here. And in fact, I would like to fix it if we can right now, just to see if that's what it is, or if there's another more serious issue. So all we need to do is, there are 4 screws here. So we need to loosen the screws a little bit, and then kick the neck in this direction. So just quickly loosen the screws, just a little bit, and then I'm pushing the neck against my shoulder, and then I'm pushing the horn in this direction, and I can see closure now. So now I'm going just to tighten the screws, and I bet this will do the trick. So let's put the guitar back down, and I can already see an improvement here. So now when we look down on the same section of the fingerboard, we can see that the string is further away from the edge. It looks about right. This one's a little close to the edge. All right, so it's not ideal, but it'll work. The guitar will play just fine. So we have 22 frets, and well, the fret ends feel a little stubby, to be honest. So I don't really feel the kind of fret sprout that feels sharp, but they do feel a little stubby. So I think that the wood did shrink a little bit. We are going to have a closer look at this later. This is an interesting nut. Is this one of those roller nuts? We are going to have a closer look at that. I can see a little gap there. So I'm not sure what I'm seeing, if that's some kind of glue there, or there definitely is a little gap. We see the walnut plug here. This means that we have a biflex truss rod, which is kind of like a two-way truss rod. And here we see that the Fender logo is a water slide decal. So you need to be careful with those, because if you ever use tape to tape off the fingerboard, you don't want the tape to accidentally land on the headstock over the logo, because when you peel off the tape, you are going to peel off the logo. So just be careful. The nut itself seems to be shimmed, so I can see a shim right there. We can have a closer look at that later as well. That's that. Now let's turn the guitar over and look at the back of the guitar. So these are the 3 springs, the trem block. I don't see any issues here at all. This looks actually very good. In fact, the solder joint is beautiful, and this wire is just the right length. Here we see the custom shop logo, and we see the serial number. We see the contoured heel for easier access to the higher frets. And then we see that this neck, it's a maple neck, but it's rift sawn. So we see these growth rings on the side and here as well, like that, which means that the growth rings are going at an angle like that. So this is not a flat sawn neck. If it was a flat sawn neck, the growth rings would be pancaked parallel to the fingerboard. And if this was a quarter sawn neck, then the growth rings would be going up and down like that. So that's not the case. This is a rift sawn neck. Here I can see, I'm not sure what I'm seeing, either a little flame or maybe some convoluted wood grain. It's very subtle, but it is there. We have the signature here and the custom shop logo. I'm not a big fan of these tuners, but this is what it is. This is a signature guitar, and this replicates what was on the original guitar, obviously. So let's take some measurements. The first measurement I'm going to take is going to be the measurement of the neck relief. Now, the neck relief is adjustable. I don't really worry about how it comes out of the factory, as long as it's adjustable. It would be like complaining that the guitar is out of tune. So you just tune it. This is why it has a truss rod. But what I do want to make sure is that we don't have an unfavorable differential relief where we might have more relief on the treble side than we have on the bass side. So that's the important thing. So I'm going to measure the neck relief on both sides using these feeler gauges and this straight edge. So let me start with this 12 1/1000ths of an inch, whatever, on the bass side. I don't know what the relief is now. And we want to put the neck block here. So neck rest. So we measure on the 8th fret. So 12 1/1000ths actually fits. The next one is 13 1/1000ths. It does not fit. It does not fit through. But 12 1/1000ths does. So I'm going to hold on to this feeler gauge, and I'm going to switch cameras so that we can document this. It does say 12 1/1000ths of an inch. And now I'm going to use the same one on the other side just to make sure that we see the same measurement. So 12 1/1000ths fits. And once again, the next one, 13 1/1000ths, as you can see, it doesn't fit. So we have a symmetrical fretboard. This is really good. If we had a difference, it would be favorable to have more relief on the bass side. But, that's sometimes favorable, but it's not necessary to have that. So now we want to make sure that the truss rod is functioning properly. So this is the Allen key that's used to adjust the truss rod. It's 1/8 of an inch, but it needs to be this special Fender Allen key, truss rod wrench, which is long on this side. So you cannot use the hardware version of the 1/8 of an inch Allen key because it's going to damage the plug. You're not gonna be able to place it deep enough. So now you need to make sure that it really fits inside before you turn it, and just push it in this direction like that. So now we are tightening the truss rod, and we want to see if the truss rod is functioning. So we had 12 1/1000ths of an inch before. So let's start with that again. And now it doesn't fit. 11 doesn't fit. 8 fits. And let's just quickly check on the other side if it's kind of the same. 8 1/1000ths of an inch fits. And the next one, I know you can't really see, it doesn't. But it adjusted this neck relief equally on both sides. That's not always the case, but in this case, it did that. Next measurement I want to take is the radius, the fingerboard radius and the fret radius. So I have this radius gauge, 9.5 inch radius. So that's the spec. So this is supposed to be a 9.5 inch radius fretboard with frets at 9.5 inch radius. sometimes on Fender guitars, I see that the frets are over-radiused, and even if the fingerboard itself has the correct 9.5-inch radius, the frets do not. So we're going to check all that. So I placed this radius gauge here between the two frets so that we can measure the radius of the fingerboard first. I took this thin feeler gauge, and first I'm going to try to place it on the side. It doesn't fit, and now I spread the strings, and it doesn't fit here. So it is a 9.5-inch radius on spec. So now we place it over one of the frets, and we measure the fret itself. And as you can see, we don't have an issue there. So these frets are in fact properly radiused, which means they are also seated all the way. We can check this quickly. As you can see, I cannot insert the feeler gauge underneath the frets. So that's very good. No issues there. The frets do feel a little stubby. Although it doesn't feel sharp, I can tell that there was some shrinkage to the wood because it feels like there are little bumps. And I want to look at the fret ends through the microscope so maybe we can see it that way. I'm not really sure what we are going to see. So here we are looking now at the second fret. This is the fret end. So you can see the scratch marks from the sandpaper. So yeah, they just went up and down with sandpaper. They did buff it after that, but they only used one grit. And here, more importantly, on the side of the fret, you can see a little bit of a bump. So the finish is getting delaminated right there. You can see a little air pocket right there because the wood is shrinking and the fret is starting to push the finish. So that's, I guess, what I was feeling when I was going up and down. You can see that the edges are rolled. Okay, so this is for comfort. And here you can see this slight delamination already. So that's that bump that I'm feeling. Okay. And you can see the same exact thing here. And not so much here. Here there's a little crack. And let's go over to this fret. So here you see that little bump. So this is the 6th fret. Now this is the 7th fret. There's a little hump right there. 8th fret. And so on. Here we're missing some of the finish. Okay, so if it stays like that, not a big deal. I could live with that. This has a roller nut. So we want to have a closer look at the nut first. We want to make sure that the nut is not too high or too low. And that's something that I always look at. So let me explain first what we are going to be looking at. First, we want to make sure that the 2nd fret isn't higher than the 2 adjacent frets. And we also check the 3rd fret. Okay, so they are even, they are leveled. And when we push the string against the 2nd fret, there's a small gap that remains right there. So I can even insert a feeler gauge to show you. And now we want to measure that gap. Now this gap should be almost down to 0, right? Because if it's too high, it's hard to push the strings down against the frets, and then also the strings actually play sharp. So what I like to use to measure the gap is this dial indicator. So these check marks are, each check mark is 10 microns. So when we place this plunger on top of the string and the plunger moves, here it makes the dial move, and then we can take a measurement. So when we push it against this fret, we're going to measure the distance that the string travels before it hits the fret. And I like to have between 2 check marks and 5 check marks, so between 20 and 50 microns. So let's see what we have here. So this is now the string against the second fret, and now we're pushing it against the first fret. So you can see this is an enormous distance. On the A string, we're probably going to see something similar. Yeah. The D string, it's a huge distance, and it appears that all the strings are like that. Now, this nut, the height is adjustable because it has 1 or 2 or whatever, 3 shims underneath. So we are going to have a closer look at that and see what they did. So let me put the guitar on the side like that, and let's have a closer look at the shim. So here I can see right away that they shimmed it too high, because we can see 3 shims there. So if I zoom in, you can clearly see that. So 3 shims is simply too much. While we're here, why don't we look at the roller nut and see how it works? This is actually really neat. So this is the string going through the nut, and there's a piece of foam at the back end, and then when you tune the string, these rollers are supposed to turn. As you can see, they are turning. So let's just look at another string. So this is the A string, and same thing is happening. So one important thing that I want to point out about this type of nut is that the takeoff point where the string starts to vibrate is actually here, not the front of the whole nut. It's here. So you cannot just remove this nut and replace it with a more traditional Fender nut, which is this one. That's an old one I removed. As you can see, this is much thinner, and also the face of the nut is in a different place. So in this case, this nut would come here, and as you can see, there's a difference where the nut shelf is cut. So this nut shelf is way wider than the nut shelf we normally see on a Fender guitar. So conversion to a regular Fender nut isn't easy for sure, and it would look like some kind of patchwork. One thing I also like to look at is if the neck happens to have a twist. So I'm just going to place this camera here and adjust the height and the tilt of the camera. Here it is. And I'm going to simply use a coffee stirring stick to take that measurement. It's not really a measurement. We are just going to sight down the neck. So the way this is done is with a stirring stick or something similar. You just need to make sure that it's straight. Sometimes they are twisted or bent, and you just place it around here. And now I'm going to show you this view. And as you can see, this is the stirring stick. And if I change focus, yeah, it's aligning with the body of the guitar, like that. So I don't see a neck twist there. Nothing to worry about. Did we forget anything? Well, we looked at everything that we could see so far. Now we are going to take I'm going to take a short break, and we are going to strip the guitar. We're going to remove the strings and strip the guitar, so next time you see this guitar, it will be naked. There's more. But before we move on, don't forget to click. And don't forget to click the share button. This way you help the community, and you also help the channel grow. Now, speaking of helping the channel grow, there is also a super thanks button you can click on. And there's also a link to buy me a coffee if you want to buy me a coffee. Now, if you don't, that's fine. We're still friends. But it really helps keep the lights on, and it really helps keep the cameras running, so I can produce more content for you in the future. Now, let's look at the same guitar again, but this time, let's look at it naked. Oh, I didn't mean to say let's look at it with me performing naked. I meant to say let's strip the guitar and let's look at the guitar naked so that we can see inside. The guitar is now naked on the bench. Well, it's almost naked because it's still got the pickguard on. But as you can see, I removed the strings, I removed the springs, and all the screws, so I can remove the pickguard. I can't remove it just yet because of the fingerboard that's overlapping the pickguard, because it's a 22 fret fingerboard. But we want to look at this bridge. We want to have a closer look at this because I was having some issues with this. As you can see, this is not seated at the front. So I'm hoping that if I just drive these screws down, that it'll fix it. And it did on this side. And then I just need to do the same, I guess, on the other side. Right. So now this is how this bridge functions. So now it's decked. And if you want to lift it, it goes like this. But if you want to set it up as a floater, then you would set it up like that. Now I can simply remove the bridge because, like I said, I already removed the spring, so nothing's holding it. We don't want it there because we don't want to damage the guitar, because we'll look at other things. Now I am noticing a minor imperfection here. So I need to put the camera on this side to show you. So here we see that this bushing is flush, all the way flush. Actually, it's actually below the surface. And this bushing is actually sticking up a little bit. And I could kind of feel that when I was driving this screw in. Now it's all the way down. And it was feeling stiffer than on this side. And here, now it's all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to perhaps try to push this bushing further down. But even as is, it functions fine. So I might not. Next thing, so we'll have to remove the neck in order to remove the pickguard. So now what I want to do is I just want to go over all the frets with the fret rocker, just to make sure that we don't have any uneven frets. I don't believe that we do, but, you know, we check everything. So here we have the fret rocker, and I'm simply going to go over all the frets. So no rocking so far. So far so good. I'm going to do this quickly. So let's just change camera angle. So this looks like a very well made fingerboard. Of course, the fret rocker is a bit limited. I can really only check 3 frets at a time. It doesn't tell me anything about issues between sections of the fingerboard. I would either have to do a 3D scan to look at that, or use other techniques like short straight edges. Now, because we have somewhat less common nut, I want to show you this roller nut through the microscope here, so that we can see how neat it is. Just let me focus. And here we go. This is where the E string goes, the high E. All right, so you see that little foam at the back. You see the screw here. So this is how it's mounted. We can remove the screw on this side, and there's another screw on the other side to remove it, to change the shims. I'm not sure what I'm seeing there at the bottom, if that's some kind of lubricant or something. And here we see a lot of it. So I'm not really sure. And now I can see that this is what I was seeing here. So whatever that is, I think I want to blow it out with a compressed air. And here as well. I don't know what that is. I've never seen this before on these nuts. Okay. But this is what it looks like through the microscope. Next, why don't I remove this nut? And we are going to see if we can lower the nut by removing 1 or 2 of the shims. Of course, now we don't have the strings on, so we can't really take proper measurements, but we can still remove the nut. So these are just Phillips head screws, 2 of them, here and here. And once I remove the nut, I'll be able to show you the shims. Okay, so these are the shims. There are 3 of them on this side. And how many did they put on the other side? 3 also. Okay, so now if we try to place this nut, as you can see, there's simply too much space. So it's not an easy conversion. Actually, a conversion back to the conventional nut should not be made on these guitars at all. I don't want to lose the shims, so maybe I should just put these back. We looked at them, and then next I'm going to remove the neck, and that's just so that I can remove the pickguard and so that we can look at the wiring. So it is a custom shop guitar. We expect things to be good. And usually the wiring is really good on these, so we'll see. But right now, I cannot remove the pickguard. I don't think I can, no. All right, so let's leave it like that. and I have to hold it here and here so that I can unscrew the neck, which I need to do anyway because I'm going to have to shim it. So just loosen the screws with a hand-driven screwdriver. And now I can use the power tool to quickly remove them. So one thing I like to see is that the holes through the body are, in fact, the right diameter, which often they are too tight on Fender guitars. But this one is a custom shop guitar, so I am not surprised that they did it right. So I need to hold on to the pickguard and remove this neck. Here it is. So while we're here, why don't we look at the this part of the neck. So it has 22 frets, and this is why there's this little fingerboard extension here, which was covering this part of the pickguard, and that's why I couldn't remove it. But now that we've removed the neck, we can simply lift the pickguard and look inside. And I can tell you right away that this is excellent work. So whoever did this did an exceptional job. And why don't we take some close-ups? So these are the double coil pickups. So that's the secondary coil, the hum canceling coil that's on the bottom of these pickups. So these wires were kept neat, nicely trimmed. So this person even went through the trouble of doing this to have enough slack, but not too much, just to service this part of the guitar. Very neat. I am really impressed. Let's look at the solder joints. They are very neat. This one, perhaps not so much. Maybe they left this a little too long here for my taste. And I actually want to trim this before I forget. So I'm simply going to clip it here. It's going to fly off. I knew it was going to fly off, but here it is. We don't want to lose track of this because we don't want it to short something out. Let's see here. All right, so some imperfections, but I'm really going to give this a high rating, okay? We have some splashes of solder here. So maybe not a 5-star rating, but a really high rating, okay? And what we see here is the 2 wires that are connected to the output jack, and then this is the grounding wire that's connected to the claw. So I personally would twist these wires, and I think I'm going to do that now that the guitar is already open, and then put it back together. So they kept these wires long so that you can do exactly what I'm doing now, obviously. So, all right, so let's keep them long. I don't have an issue with that. But I am going to twist the wires, so I'm going to have to remove the output jack and then twist the wires and resolder it. Now, speaking of the output jack, I am sure that this is a switchcraft jack, but we're going to check. The output jack is, if you think about it, one of the most important parts of an electric guitar, because if it fails, the entire guitar doesn't work. So it doesn't matter if you have a good setup, if you have good strings, or if the guitar is in tune. If the output jack fails on stage, the guitar doesn't work. So here, why don't we have a look? We want to look at the solder joints and the jack itself. So this is a Switchcraft output jack, and it's neatly soldered. I really have no issues with that, and it's nice and tight. So this is all good. I think we've seen enough. So the guitar isn't perfect, but now that it's here, I'm going to address some of the issues. And when it goes back to the customer, I'm going to give it back with these improvements. So one thing that I like to look at is a reflection of the frets. So the fret rocker, once again, just tests 3 frets at a time. Now, these are not highly polished frets, but we can still see a reflection. So hold on, how should I do this? We have towards the camera here. So we want to see that the reflection isn't zigzagging. So we don't really see it here because of the way that the frets are polished. So here, now you see it. So it's not exactly a straight line. There seems to be a low spot here a little bit. You can see that. That's where it's now showing up darker a little bit. And then there's a bright spot here. So there seems to be a low spot here. Okay? So the fret rocker cannot pick up this imperfection. I would be able to see it if I scan the fingerboard, but it seems like it is just kicked up a little bit here. And then there's a low spot around here, which is actually common. But it's not severe, so I think the guitar will work just fine. I ended up doing a 3D scan of the neck, which I'm about to show you. But let me explain something a little bit. I initially tightened the truss rod a little bit just so that I could dial in the proper relief, just to test the truss rod. And that was done at full string tension. Now, later I removed the strings and I removed the neck, but I left the truss rod tight. So sometimes that's going to put the neck into a little bit of a back bow. And I wanted to do a 3D scan with the neck in that state so that I could study it in that state. And let's look at the 3D scan. So this is the 3D scan of that neck. As you can see, this is the Fender logo right there. And now, if I adjust these levels, I'm highlighting the high spots on the neck. So I can adjust these levels just to see it more clearly. And here you can see that there is, in fact, a high spot on the neck. And once again, that's simply because the truss rod is tight. What I wanted to see really was if there was a high spot here and a low spot here. Now, it appears that there is a little bit of a high spot at the heel of the neck right there, the fingerboard extension, and a low spot here, and then we have a high spot again. I don't think it's going to affect the performance of the guitar, so every neck is not going to be perfect, and this one is like that. But I wouldn't do anything about it at this point. So let's look further. Now, if I just spread this like that, and if I adjust this level, you can see that the gray is starting to hit some of the high spots on the frets. And it's hitting this pretty much even. In fact, it looks like the last fret is a little bit lower, which is actually a good thing. So let's continue adjusting this level. And as you can see now, the gray is starting to hit the fingerboard itself. And if I leave it like this, you can see it confirms that there's a hump here, which once again is there because the truss rod is tight. And then we can see that this area is actually pretty good. I don't really have any issues with this neck. It's going to perform well. I'm just going to polish the frets and do a setup. So that's it, my friends. Like I said, Guitar Quackery is a consumer advocate channel. I do non-biased reviews on this channel, like this one. I show you what I see. Make sure you come back, and I guess I'll see you soon.